Okay, we have Christmas market outside. I'm saying for those who are online. Yeah. Even in Luxembourg, it can be noisy. Yeah. Who would expect? No? Who would expect? Okay. Usually, when I'm teaching online, uh, I live in Israel, and when I'm teaching online, and I live next to Air Force Base, so quite often, particularly recently, I have fighter jets flying over my roof. And of course, it's a strong sound. And then when I'm teaching meditation online, I'm just asking, okay, we just integrate with the sound. I don't hear myself. So it's okay, not a problem. Okay. So let's begin, and I would love to greet you and thank you for inviting me to be here in this very cozy Tibetan Cultural Center in Luxembourg, in the center of Luxembourg. It's not so difficult to be in the center of Luxembourg when you're in Luxembourg. Yeah, it's pretty central everywhere. Yeah, and I would like to introduce myself a little bit, and I am, as you probably already know, my name is Igor Berkin, and I was born in the Soviet Union, and then the place where I was born became Ukraine, and then the place where I was born became People's Republic of Donetsk, and since 2 years it is already Russia. So you see, the place is the same, but the countries change. But since last 8 years, I live in Israel, and I've been a student of Dzogchen mainly, of Buddhism in general, and of Dzogchen mainly since quite a long time. I became interested in mid-80s, not in my mid-80s, but in a common mid-80s. And then after the Iron Curtain fell, I received opportunities to really study, to contact traditional lineages from China, from Korea, from and of course from Tibet. And I studied with different teachers from different traditions. But my main teacher, my root teacher, was and is Chogyal Namkha Norbu, who unfortunately passed away 6 years ago. And I spent many years studying with him. And also I was his main Russian translator for about 15 or 17 years. And also since 2002, I've been also teaching, not just being a student, but also teaching, first of all, for my fellow Vajra brothers and sisters from the international Dzogchen community, and also where I was invited. And I'm trying to do my best to communicate the knowledge that I received from my teacher. And I consider that this is an important knowledge, and it is very useful, particularly in this age. And in this age, many ways of practice are not so easy for social reasons. For example, it's almost impossible to be a monk. Because for being a monk, we need to have a society that supports monks, how it was in the time of the Buddha. And because monks are not supposed to work, and monks are supposed to live on donation given by lay people, by devoted lay people. So monks also, they are supposed to have some merits for having the donations, not just the robes. yeah, but also some merits. And nowadays, of course, it's quite difficult. Also, monks should live in a monastery. They cannot live among lay people, because if they live among lay people, they, whether they want it or not, they break their commitments. Yeah? And if they break commitments, monastic commitments, they cannot have a fruit of their practice. So Dzogchen teaching is suitable for general people, for people who are not monks, who live ordinary life.
Sorry.
Okay.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, it's okay. It's just a sound.
I can't take the sound out somehow.
It's just a sound. No problem. No really need to be sorry about anything, because in general we consider that when we do practice of meditation, everything should be very quiet, and there should be no disturbances. But how can we have no disturbances in this life? It's very difficult. Even we travel somewhere, but there still will be a lot of noise, a lot of sound. So, for example, in the Dzogchen teaching, we learn how we integrate with all kinds of manifestations, with all kinds of sounds, with all kinds of sensations, feelings, with all kinds of thoughts, with all kinds of sensory perceptions, all kinds of visions. So we do not exclude anything. We don't say this is good, this is bad. In Dzogchen teaching, we have the principle which is called Samantabhadra in Tibetan Kuntu Sangpo, which means always good, good in all circumstances. And what is good? It is our real nature. So our real nature is called Samantabhadra, or our real nature can be also called Dzogchen. Because Dzogchen is not just a teaching. Dzogchen is our real nature, is our real state. We can say primordial state. It has many names. And I guess that since you study Tibetan Buddhism, so you know the word bodhicitta. And we use this word bodhicitta in the teaching of Dzogchen. Also in Tibetan, it is Chanchub Sem. And the meaning is different from the meaning that we have in sutras and in Vajrayana Tantras. The meaning of bodhicitta is our real primordial state, our enlightened state. Sometimes we say Rikpa bodhicitta, sometimes we say Vajra bodhicitta. But it's our real nature, and it is an enlightened state, not just the wish to become enlightened, but already a fully enlightened state, fully enlightened nature that all beings possess, but the birthright, which cannot be created. So Dzogchen is the name of this state. And Dzogchen is also the name of a path. We say the path of Dzogchen. We also can use the name Ati Yoga or Primordial Yoga. It can have many names. It can even go without name, because we don't really need a name for practicing. We need a name just for communicating with other people. That's why we need names. That's why we need words. So, but the path of what is that? It is a path of liberation. And of course, it was Buddha Shakyamuni who was talking about the principles of liberation or attaining nirvana. And he said that there is suffering, there is a cause of suffering, there is a possibility to stop suffering, and there is a path which allows us to stop suffering. And of course, Buddha Shakyamuni showed the path, but this idea of liberation was not the idea created by Buddha Shakyamuni. This idea existed before, because already why Buddha Shakyamuni came to this understanding, because he was looking for liberation. He discovered suffering. You know probably very well this story. I don't need to repeat it. So he discovered that there is suffering and there was a search for the path of liberation. And there were many people who were looking for that. And of course, the people who were looking for that, they not only they lived in India, they lived in many different places. Because more or less suffering is a universal condition, and when we as human beings reach certain level of human development, we understand that there is suffering, and we become interested in stopping suffering. Sometimes about stopping suffering, I'm telling a joke. A student of meditation is approaching a teacher and is asking the teacher, and teacher, how to put an end to suffering? And the teacher is answering, sit on a chair. When people are comfortable sitting on the floor, that's wonderful. But sometimes people are sitting on the floor just because they have an idea that it's culturally required, or just a requirement to do meditation, etc., and they suffer. And sometimes it becomes really weird. I remember once I was teaching. I was giving a course on meditation in Latvia, in Riga, and the people who were there, they were mostly Russian-speaking people and like older generation who went maybe not through the war, but through many hardship in their life. They went, and I was sitting on the floor. And they were also sitting on the floor. But I asked them, please sit on a chair, because I saw that it was not easy for them to sit on the floor. And I was begging them, please sit on a chair. But they were saying, no, we are okay. And they were suffering, struggling. And finally, they gave up, and they because also the practice didn't work for them. They couldn't really concentrate because it was cold. It was not warm like here, but it was quite cold, and they were really terribly suffering. And finally they gave up. They moved to the chairs and said, oh my God, how good. And then the practice started to go. Yeah. So we should always go into the essence, not into the name, not into the form, and understand the difference. What is very important, to understand the difference between the essence of the teaching and the culture from which this teaching came to us. That's very important. And I know that many teachers of different traditions, and Chinese, Japanese, Tibetan, I don't know, Indian, from Sri Lanka, etc. When Western students come to them, the first requirement is, in a way, to become Tibetan, to become a Chinese, to become a Japanese, etc. So change dress, change the way you say hello. Yeah, change the way how you greet people, change all the way how you live. So become, but it's fake, no? We cannot become Tibetans. There is no way for us to become in this life to become Tibetans. Yeah, to become Japanese, etc. When I was younger, I was trying to be interested in like in Japanese art, or like tea ceremony or something like that. But then I understood that it doesn't connect with the essence of the teaching, so I just stopped trying. And one of the things for which I really value my teacher Chogyal Namkha Norbu, he never asked me to become Tibetan first before starting to practice. And actually it is very interesting, he had almost no Tibetan students. He was officially like Tibetan culture is very hierarchical because it is connected to Chinese culture very much. So it got this approach of hierarchy, social hierarchy. And you know, all these lamas, they have different ranks, and there are many hierarchies within Tibetan Buddhism. And even though my teacher Chogyal Kanorbu, he was recognized as a like top rank reincarnation in Tibet. He never used that. He lived normal life. He came from India. He didn't flee to India. He went on pilgrimage. And at this moment, all this story in Tibet happened, so he could not return. But he did not flee. And since he could not return, he had to find a way to go on, to continue, and he received an invitation from Professor Tucci from Oriental Institute in Napoli, Italy. And he moved there to work in archives. And then he started to teach Tibetan and the Mongolian language and culture in the University of Naples, of Napoli. And he came to Europe just having a small suitcase without any connection to monasteries, to lineages, etc. And he was working for till 90s. He was working normal way. He was a professor at a university, so he was renting house for himself, repairing house for himself. He was getting driving license. He was paying taxes. So he was doing all things that we do in our lives. So he discovered perfectly how Western people live, perfectly, because he spent many decades. Even before he started to teach, it was 15 years before between he came to Italy and he started to teach. So he knew very well the condition of Western people, of us. And that's why he had mostly Western students, and very, very few Tibetans attended his teachings, because he was not teaching in a traditional way. He was teaching usually. He had like training suit, something like training pants and slippers, and just normal t-shirt or normal shirt, etc. So he was not using special dress for giving a teaching, because this is not the point. He was not like wearing a crown, even giving important initiations. He was not doing that. So he was more like continuing the tradition of old Mahasiddhas who had very, very simple life, and they didn't have a possibility to use all these attributes and manifesting some significance in a social sense of this word. And my teacher was always saying that for modern people, Dzogchen is a very valuable knowledge, because it allows us to be how we are. We don't have to change. Of course we will change, because when we start to learn something, we start to understand things, and then certain things we stop doing, certain things we start doing, but it is all natural. It's not because this is a rule, but it is because we become aware of the situation. And we follow how he was saying, we are working with circumstances. So Dzogchen is another path of liberation. We have many paths of liberation, many types. Sometimes in the teaching of Dzogchen, we say that we have approaches, like 3 approaches: Sutra, Tantra, and Dzogchen. And they are based on different principles. And for example, the principle of Sutra, we call it is renunciation. And renunciation doesn't mean that we throw out valuables and we start to wear simple clothes, etc. No. But I give an example. When we have some emotion, like when we have an emotion of anger, for example, or jealousy, and if we follow this emotion, if we are conditioned by this emotion, then we create a lot of bad karma. Then we get into troubles. There are many things, like for example, emotions we know very well. So not only they propel us to do things, not only they push us, condition us to do different things, but they also distort our vision. totally distort our vision. When we are overwhelmed by an emotion like anger or jealousy, etc., then our mind is interpreting things, is interpreting what we see in a totally distorted way, totally wrong way. And then when we come to senses, we come back to senses and we understand what kind of mess we made, and we understand that it had nothing behind it except for our jealousy, yeah, for example, or our anger. Then we understand how wrong we were, yeah? Because emotions create vision. Emotions distort our current vision. Yeah? This is another problem with emotions. Besides, they are pushing us to create bad karma. And another thing about certain emotions, also emotions like jealousy and anger and attachment, they are painful. Yeah? They are really painful. We can see that even when we are in rage, when we are angry, when our face can get red and people get stroke or heart attack just because they are angry. And when, for example, we cannot get what we want, and it means attachment, how much we are suffering. Yeah? We can suffer a little bit, but we can suffer really terribly, for example, when we cannot be with someone we want to be with. Yeah? So the emotion itself, this passion itself, can be very painful. So these are three main problems with emotions. Yeah? And then in Sutra teaching, particularly Buddha Shakyamuni was saying that emotions are like poisons. So we need to renounce emotions. It means that we apply some methods, some antidotes in order to overcome the function of these emotions. We try to neutralize these emotions and we prevent these emotions from arising. It means that we avoid situations in which emotions can easily arise. Yeah? For example, going into big crowds of people or entering into some kind of intimate relationship or making business. Yeah? Because all these situations, they provoke emotions like greed, jealousy, competition, attachment, etc. Yeah? That's why people become monks, yeah? To avoid, to create an environment in which there is less temptations. Of course, it doesn't work 100%, but the principle is that when we say renunciation, it means that in terms of emotions, we need to eliminate those poisonous emotions that already have arisen and to prevent new emotions from arising. Yeah? So this means renunciation. The same thing in meditation. We say that thoughts become problems for meditation. So our mind is always judging and thinking. All the time we have some thoughts. So in the Sutra approach, we want to eliminate thoughts from our mind, to make it remain clear from thoughts, and also avoid situations that would provoke thoughts. Yeah? So this is the approach of Sutra. This is called the path of renunciation. And we can see that it is almost impossible to avoid situations which provoke emotions. Yeah? It means that we shouldn't watch TV, we shouldn't go online, really, because immediately it provokes emotions. Huh? In Tantra, we have a different approach. We have an approach which is called the path of transformation. And what do we transform? We transform our vision. And our vision in general, it is a dualistic vision, which means that we feel that we are subject and everything else, these are objects. And we are separate from these objects. They are something alien to us. They are not us, all these objects. What we see, what we hear, this is what is called dualism. The division into subject and object. And when we have subject and when we have object, then immediately we enter into relationship with the object. As soon as we pay attention to a certain object, we enter into some kind of relationship with this object, and this relationship is either we want to get it or we want to reject it, or we can ignore it also. And ignorance, ignorance is the root poison, the basic cause of all problems and suffering. So in Vajrayana, we substitute our vision. We substitute our vision with what is called a pure vision, non-dual vision. And we cannot just say, okay, from this moment on, I'm going to be in pure vision. It's impossible. It's impossible. Even we can understand that dualistic vision is a confusion, it still doesn't help. It's very easy to understand that dualistic vision is a confusion. If we, maybe it's not easy to understand for a person who grew up in an agricultural community and never went to secondary school or high school, maybe for them it's not so easy to understand it. But if you studied at school, we all studied, at least at some extent, we studied biology, for example. And at least all of us, we have an idea how our eye is working, right? Yeah, that for example, when we have an object, okay, we say we have a bottle, yeah? But do we say bottle? No. Our eye is like a lens. So first of all, this bottle is upside down, and then it becomes also very small, yeah? The size comparable to our eye. Yeah, so the light which reflects from this bottle is going through the lens of our eye, and there is a process of refraction there, and then it falls onto retina, onto different kinds of cells. The cells that detect colors, 3 types of cells for most people, and other types of cells that react on the intensity of light. Yeah? And then this light starts chemical reaction, which results in electric impulse that goes through the nerve, optical nerve, and this optical nerve connects to occipital lobe of our cortex. What happens next, we don't really know still. Yeah, but at least this is enough to understand that what we see is our own production, is the production of our nervous system. It is not the reality. It's a copy of reality. There is a prototype. You're not talking about solipsistic point of view. Yeah? So it's a copy, some kind of a copy of reality, but it is decoded in a way that we don't really know. Yeah? Because in reality, there are no colors. Colors exist only in our perception. Yeah? So we can easily understand that everything that we see, what we see, yeah? I don't mean that, for example, I am a production of your nervous system. No, fortunately for you. But what you see as me, what you see as the center, as the Buddha, Guru Padmasambhava, different teachers, what you see as this is the production, yeah, of your nervous system. And also what we hear. We can say that we hear this Christmas market, but what we really hear is the production of our nervous system, not the Christmas market. Christmas market is a secondary cause for this perception to arise, but the nature of this perception is our own energy, is our own potentiality to manifest things. Yeah? So this is a knowledge which is common to Tantra and also Dzogchen. And then, in order to overcome this, this separation, this division, because you see, even you all, I'm sure that you all understand what I just explained. It's not so difficult to understand, right? We understand it we can understand it in high school, and it's actually kind of a commonplace in the philosophy of mind for last at least 60 years. Yeah, because I read about this principle, which is actually the principle of virtual reality. I read about this principle in a book by Polish philosopher Stanisław Lem, and that book was published in 60s. Yeah, and I read it in 70s, more or less, or 80s. I don't remember. Yeah, so it's kind of a commonplace. But the point is that even though we understand it intellectually, does it affect our perception? No. We still have dualistic perception. We still see things as something separate and different from us. So intellectual understanding does not work. And for this reason, we need what is called initiation or empowerment. Yeah? Vajrayana initiation, Vajrayana empowerment. We can use different words for that. And the principle of this Vajrayana empowerment is that through the process of empowerment, not only we intellectually understand the falsity of this principle of division into subject and object, but we can have a direct experience of being non-dual, of realizing non-dual vision, yeah? At least for a short time. Yeah? We can have through interaction with someone who lives in this knowledge. Yeah? This is very important. That's why in Vajrayana we need guru. We don't need just a teacher who is explaining things. It's not enough to read books, it's not enough to read lectures, but we need someone who can have an impact on our energy, yeah? In order to mimic, to mirror this person and to have the same experience. So it's a very basic way of learning things. Yeah? Because usually we say, oh, we learn when we read something, when we hear something, etc. But so many important things in our life we learned before we learn to talk, before we learn to understand human speech. Yeah? For example, standing upright. Nobody was explaining us how to stand upright. Of course, our parents were helping us, but the main thing was that we were mimicking them. We were copying them. And this copying is not even conscious. Yeah. I can give you an example. And those of you who were feeding, for example, children or old people, you probably had this experience. Right? When I go to see my mom at the hospital and I'm feeding her because she cannot eat herself, she cannot hold the spoon anymore. And when I'm feeding her, I take a spoon of food, I put into her mouth, she's swallowing and I swallow. I cannot resist it. Really, I'm trying to resist it, but it is so strong, this connection, that when she is swallowing food, I reflectively also swallow. Yeah? And this is exactly how we learn many things. We are mirroring beings. We are mirroring each other. And this is a very basic way to learn. And then, for example, besides that, another important capacity that we learn is capacity of articulate speech. Yeah? So for example, Luxembourg is an amazing place. So people speak usually at least 4 languages. Yeah, they speak French, German, Luxembourgish, and English also. Yeah? So 4 languages is a norm, and but you do not speak without an accent, right? Some people speak without an accent, but many people still speak with an accent. For example, when they speak English, and there are sounds in English which are very alien to both, like French, like Romanic world or Germanic world. And so even though we've been explained how to say like this table, yeah, but we still are saying table. Yeah, so something like this. And even though they explain, you put your tongue this way, etc., but it takes really a lot of training to learn to speak without an accent. Yeah, but our mother tongue, we are speaking without an accent. Absolutely. And nobody would explain to us that, for example, if you are French speaking, that how to say ra, like this sound, ra, which is a big problem for both English speaking people or Russian speaking people to say this French, this bonjour, bonjour. Yeah, yeah. So it becomes difficult, no? But for those whose mother tongue is French, there is no problem. Also, there are many complicated sounds in Russian language, which is my mother tongue. And for us, it's very easy to say something like "u," yeah. But when Europeans, I mean Western Europeans, because Polish and Slovaks and Czechs, they have this sound. But Western Europeans, they all like stumble trying like, what is that? How you pronounce it? Yeah. But we have no problem pronouncing it. How did we learn it? We didn't learn it through any kind of explanation. We learned it through mirroring interaction. And it was not visual interaction, it was audio interaction. Yeah? So there are different ways. And then we can notice that we also copy many habits of our parents unconsciously. Yeah? So we are copying, very often we're copying their worldview. And this is a different kind of interaction. And in Vajrayana and also in Dzogchen, we are using this way of learning. We are learning through the interaction on the level of our energy. We call it energy. It is not something like esoteric, something strange. It is the way how we interact. And it's also about non-verbal communication. So when we have a teacher who not only has a capacity to be in the knowledge of non-duality, in the non-dual presence, but also has a capacity to project this. You know, we call it charisma, yeah? We call it charisma, you know, why would people go to theater? Yeah? I was always wondering why people would go to theater. It's so boring, you know? Yeah. You see something, they pretend they are kings or something like this, yeah? They, like when they do Othello, they put some makeup on their faces and they pretend they are Moors, yeah? Which doesn't work very well, yeah? But some of the actors, they have this quality of charisma. And with this quality, you forget that they are on stage. Yeah? We forget that that it is just imitation. This is not reality, because there is this quality of projecting energy, of influencing energy. Yeah? So a similar quality we have, and we use this quality for transmitting the knowledge of Vajrayana, of Tantra. And in this way, for example, when we transform, here we have, for example, a tanka of a green Tara here, or some other deities, I can see white Tara. We transform, we are not just mimicking that, but it gives us an example of how to be in a non-dual presence. And non-dual means that what we see, what we imagine is our own imagination. Yeah? And we are fully aware that this is our own imagination. Yeah? So this is not something different, but it still manifests to us, to our perception, not to our eyes, not to our ears, but to our mental perception. These images clearly manifest, and we can recognize this as an example of a non-dual vision, which is the essence of the generation stage. And then we learn how to bring this understanding also onto the sensory level, yeah? Which is more difficult, which requires dealing with the channels, chakras, with energy, etc. Which it is more difficult. But the principle is that we transform, we discover this non-dual vision, and then in this non-dual vision, we cannot really generate emotions ordinary way. We cannot generate, because if you understand, okay, if I feel that this is something valuable and this does not belong to me, I may want it. But when I understand that this vision, this is just a vision, this is just a projection of my nervous system, for example, or my energy, like Rolpa energy, sometimes we say, display of my energy, yeah? Then how could I develop desire to have something which is already myself? Yeah? It's like this is my hand, it's already mine. I cannot want it. Yeah? Yeah? It's already mine. Yeah? It's me. It's not something separate from me. So in this way, this is a kind of vision that doesn't allow. How can jealousy arise in this way? If you see that everything is just a vision and projection of my own energy, how can jealousy arise? Yeah? Still, there is a possibility through interaction of some movement of energy to arise, which we usually interpret as emotions, as passions. But then this movement is totally transformed. Yeah? And mainly it's about emotions of sexual desire and fear of death. Yeah, and it's very similar to our culture. Yeah, Eros and Thanatos. Yeah, yeah, these like two powers, and they are used in Vajrayana Tantra very much. This the fear, not the death itself, but the fear of death and sexual desire. Yeah? We are using it. We are provoking these energies. We are provoking these states because then it really helps us to integrate this vision into our physical existence, not remaining just on the mental level. But of course, it is not easy. Yeah? So this is the principle of Vajrayana, and that's why we call it the path of transformation. And it is not just like being an actor in a theater that we are playing via Tara, we are playing via Vajrasattva, we are playing like via Hevajra or Kalachakra, etc. No, it's a specific kind of vision, and there are ways, there are means that allow us to directly experience this. And this is the point of initiation. Yeah, it's not the point, as oftentimes they say, oh, but this creates a cause for you, few lifetimes after this one you will be able to practice that. No, we should have this experience, at least some of this experience, at least a glimpse of this experience we should have. At least some kind of movement of energy we should feel during the process of initiation that would allow us later to apply methods and to develop this knowledge and experience. Yeah? So this is the path of transformation, how we deal also with emotions. We transform emotions, and we say that the nature of emotions is wisdom, and we transform emotions into wisdom. How can we understand it? Yeah? I give an example that, for example, we have an emotion of attachment. Yeah? And emotion of attachment has the nature of discriminating wisdom when we recognize that this thing is totally different from all others. Yeah. And say, but why? These all things are the same. And you say, no, this is a special one. Yeah? So this is also discriminating wisdom, which is the nature of attachment, real nature of attachment. So when we are in a non-dual state, we develop this quality of wisdom, and the same state does not manifest as attachment. Yeah? But attachment and other emotions, they are not inherently bad, because also they inform us about things. Yeah? When we feel anger, it means that there is something which is dangerous to us. This is the original meaning of anger. Something is dangerous. Also, we don't want to experience fear unless, well, there are some people who want to go to horror movies and they enjoy it very much, or they do some extreme sports, etc., because fear gives adrenaline, and then we can enjoy it. Then we feel alive, you know. in this like half-dead old Europe, with at least there is a chance to start feeling alive a little bit with horror. Yeah. And we are trying to avoid fear at any cost. You know, like we are protected from this, we are protected from that, etc. But the point is that without fear, how long would we have lived without fear? I think that most of us would have died already like before 10 years old. Yeah, if we had no fear. But fear is saving our life in many situations. Without fear, we would have done so many stupid things that would have ended our lives. Yeah. So fear and anger, they give us a signal something's wrong. Yeah. Also, attachment shows us the way to survive. Without attachment, would we be able to survive? No. Why would we eat without attachment? Why would we have sex without attachment? There would be no reason for us to have sex if we had no attachment. Even attachment to pleasure, yeah? Why would we do that? But without sex, you know, people are not getting bored without sex. Yeah? So we wouldn't survive as a species without having sex. And then it's based on attachment. And attachment is saying, basically, like original attachment, that with this being, you can procreate. And with that one, you cannot. Now it's all messed up, but it's okay. Still, we have some chances to survive, yeah. But this is the reason why, in general, not only human beings, but just living beings, why they have sex, yeah. They make sex in order to procreate. Yeah? And then, of course, we discovered life hacks, and we all learned whether like it doesn't matter which kind of orientation we have, but we all learned to have sex without coming even close to procreation. Yeah? So, but the principle of attachment is to continue life. Yeah? Without this attachment, there would be no life. You know, monks do not procreate, at least in theory. They're not supposed to. Some of them do. Yeah, still. But, you know, there is difference between theory and reality always, yeah. So, this is an example that emotions contain wisdom, knowledge. Jealousy contains wisdom. Pride contains wisdom. This sounds like a heresy for those who are mainly used to practice the Sutra path, yeah? But it requires special methods. So, and when we are talking about Dzogchen teaching, in Dzogchen teaching, we do not really transform. We go to a more deep level. We discover that principle, that potentiality, which can both manifest as a pure vision and also as an impure vision. So we discover what we call the primordial state. And we learn to discover that all sounds, all perceptions are manifestations of this primordial state. So it becomes also non-dual, but it does not really require specific transformation into some deity. We can discover this directly in whatever we are experiencing, whether we are dealing with our mind, whether we are dealing with our sensory perceptions, where we are dealing with our deep sensations, etc. There are ways, but again, we need a teacher who would introduce us and show it to us. Show not in literal way, like showing, look at this, no. But showing means making understand. So the path of Dzogchen is, in this sense, quite different from both Sutra and Tantra, but it is still the path of liberation because it puts an end to suffering. It doesn't mean it puts an end to pain. Also, we should understand very well that pain and suffering are not exactly the same. We cannot avoid pain. What we can avoid suffering from pain. And not only Dzogchen, but also Sutra and Tantra, we still experience pain. We still experience old age and sickness and death. Yeah, still experience. Even we know the story of the Buddha Shakyamuni. He had illnesses, yeah, and he died because of food poisoning. There is a discussion whether he ate pork or he ate mushroom, but it was still a food poisoning, and he died of food poisoning with terrible pain, of course. Yeah, but suffering is different. Suffering is a mental condition. So there is a way to put an end to suffering through understanding the nature of reality, through understanding the nature of mind. Yeah. Then even we can have pain, but we can be okay with this pain. We can even enjoy this pain, which is not very uncommon. Yeah. We know that there are people who enjoy a certain level of pain, of course. Yeah. Certain level. Not all possible levels of pain. Yeah. And for example, I can remember a story that one doctor told me. He was removing a bad nail from a toe of my teacher, and usually they do apply painkiller for that, because removing the nail from the toe is incredibly painful. You know, this is one of the tortures like they did in Guantanamo, for example. And he asked my teacher if he wanted to have this painkiller, and he said, no, just do it. And then this doctor, he is Spanish, he told me, I was removing this finger from him and I was looking into his face and he didn't even blink. Yeah. But there was pain, definitely. Oh, it is very interesting. Even our perception of pain can be different. I remember in my experience in 2004 in Margarita Island, we were staying for a long time with Chogyal Norbo there, and there was an epidemic of dengue fever, which is very heavy. And somehow I managed, I got it. Chogyal Norbo himself had it. And it was transmitted by mosquitoes. There were plenty of mosquitoes there, so I also got it. And it was a very interesting experience, one of the most interesting experiences of my life, because painful, every single touch was painful. Touching the table with my fingers was painful. Stepping on a foot was painful. My t-shirt was hitting me when I was walking, and it was painful. And then when a car would jump on some bad place on the road, it is painful. But then when you are present and you really integrate with this pain, pain remains, pain doesn't go anywhere. But at the same time, you discover incredible pleasure. At the same time, incredible pleasure. And then it becomes interesting and you explore it, how it works. So this is how it works. Yeah. For example, with pain, how it can work. So these are all paths of liberation. And why does it become so controversial about Dzogchen teaching? Yeah. Then, of course, in Vajrayana, we can understand why Vajrayana is controversial, because they're using emotions, the path, yeah, and therefore the things that people do when they are practicing Vajrayana might not correspond to common understanding of morality, which particularly relates to sexual activity, for example, or some kinds of wrathful activity. Yeah, now no more suffering. Yeah, much better. You see, the path of liberation, it's easy. Yeah, it's simple. Yeah. So, but also in Dzogchen, there is another problem, because it is very difficult to believe that the state of enlightenment is our primordial state, that this is our inherent condition. And that it can be discovered directly. by ordinary people like us. Yeah. Sometimes they say, no, it's only like very high-level bodhisattvas can discover this. No. If it were only high-level bodhisattvas, that wouldn't be a complete path. That wouldn't be really a path of liberation. Yeah? So we never know until we try. Yeah? So this can look problematic. And also it's about how much time we need. Yeah? Because usually we are conditioned by time. And it's interesting. Also another thing is that we say that Dzogchen is beyond cause and effect. Yeah? The state of Dzogchen is beyond cause and effect. It means that we cannot create it. And the words beyond cause and effect, these words are not very welcome in general Buddhism, yeah, because Buddha was teaching cause and effect. He was teaching, everything he was teaching was based on cause and effect. He was saying, like, here is suffering, here is the cause of suffering. If you remove the cause of suffering, then there is no suffering. And then it is very interesting that one fact, and I really discovered this, I realized it only preparing for this talk. I realized that in original Buddhism, Buddhism that arose in North India 2,500 years ago, and which remained more or less remained as Buddhist teachings in Thailand and Burma and Sri Lanka, etc., what we know Theravada nowadays. That was a more original historical Buddhism coming from the Buddha Shakyamuni. Then in this teaching, Buddha was saying that suffering has a cause, but nirvana, liberation, does not have a cause. He was always saying that it is unconditioned and uncreated. It does not have a cause. Suffering does. So we remove the cause of suffering, we remove suffering. But he was never saying that we can build enlightenment, that we can build liberation, because building means we are using causes and conditions in order to produce some fruit. And only when I was preparing for this talk, I noticed something interesting, that in Mahayana Buddhism, of course, it started many years, many centuries after the Buddha Shakyamuni. It is not a kind of official point of view of Buddhism, but it's like a historical thing, that first Mahayana Sutra started to appear a few centuries after the parinirvana of Buddha Shakyamuni. And many of them appeared in the 2nd century AD, not even before Christ. And some appeared even later, many teachings of Mahayana. So in Mahayana, there is this idea that enlightenment has causes. Which are the causes of enlightenment? Say the accumulation of merits and the accumulation of wisdom. And they serve as causes of enlightenment. So we need to collect, to accumulate. And then, like in video game, you reach certain level, and you got a prize, you got a bonus. So the idea is a little bit like that, because we need causes and we accumulate. And which doesn't correspond, actually. I don't say it is wrong, because this is just an idea. Any idea can be useful. No idea is absolute. We are using ideas to communicate something important. We are using words to communicate something important. But the meaning is always beyond words. So sometimes we use these words. We use the words that there is a cause and effect. Sometimes we use the words that there is no cause and effect. The point is what we want to communicate. Because what we communicate is really beyond words, is beyond concepts. So in different situations, we can use different words. So in Mahayana, we say that enlightenment is a result, is a production of accumulating merits and accumulating wisdoms. Accumulating merits means that we do many good things, and accumulating wisdom means that we understand emptiness, we understand interdependence in many, many different circumstances, situations. Because in fact, the understanding of emptiness is always the same. It cannot be accumulated. How can you accumulate emptiness? No, more emptiness, less emptiness. Like in Indian Buddhism and then in Tibetan Buddhism, they had these debates. Okay, whose emptiness is more empty? They were trying to prove, and they were saying, Nagarjuna's emptiness is much better than Vasubandhu's emptiness, much more empty. Yeah, but if you take Chandrakirti, his emptiness is even more elaborate than Nagarjuna. So we only need to follow Nagarjuna Chandrakirti emptiness and not follow Asanga or Vasubandhu emptiness. Yeah, but emptiness is emptiness, no? We can have different kinds of ideas about emptiness, but again, ideas about emptiness is not emptiness, it's something, not really emptiness. So, but we can discover the principle of emptiness in different situations. Like it is explained in Heart Sutra, for example, we say that eye is empty, so visual perception is empty. Then audio perception is empty. Then, for example, our sensations are empty. Or like 5 aggregates are empty. So we accumulate different phenomena, different dharmas. We recognize their emptiness. And in this way, we accumulate the knowledge of emptiness. Yeah? And then when we accumulate enough, then it is said in Mahayana, we can realize Dharmakaya, or the dimension of existence of the Buddha, of the enlightened state. And when we do enough good things and accumulate enough of good karma, then we can have Rupakaya, which allows us to help beings. But of course, there was a lot of criticism of this point of view, even within Mahayana Sutra. And people were saying that we cannot really have Dharmakaya without its qualities, without Rupakaya, without Nirmanakaya, Sambhogakaya. It comes like in one package, all in one. Yeah? And there was also this principle of direct enlightenment, or immediate, or like non-gradual enlightenment within Mahayana Sutra. But also for people who have this approach, or gradual approach, to tell them that we can go, kind of go through a back door into enlightenment. Many people don't like this idea, because of course you do a lot of hard work and then somebody is saying, yeah, but this could be done, like this, easy. Yeah? So this idea is not welcome. And there are many reasons for this. Why people accept some ideas and they do not accept some ideas. For example, you probably know that there was this very famous debate in Samye Monastery in Tibet in the 8th century, when King Tisron Detsen, he invited Kamalashila, Indian Pandita, very, very knowledgeable. His Holiness the Dalai Lama likes to give teachings on Kamalashila's Bhavanakrama, this teaching. And from another side, there was a Chinese teacher called Hashang. And this Hashang was a proponent of what we know as Zen teaching or Chan teaching, which was about non-gradual enlightenment. One was about gradual enlightenment, one was about non-gradual enlightenment. And the official account in Tibetan Chronicles says that this debate was won by Kamalashila. Yeah, and then Indian Buddhism was accepted as an official state doctrine, official ideology of this newly born Tibetan empire. And they say that that Hashang totally lost. And there are different accounts about this. And for example, a great, very important teacher, Nupchen Sangye Yeshe, And since recent time, he is very much connected to Luxembourg because Dylan Esler, who translated his this great work by Nupchan Sangye Yeshe, The Light for the Eyes of Contemplation, Dylan Esler lives in Luxembourg. So it's an incredibly important book, and this is a huge work that was done to translate this book in its entirety. Yeah, actually, I met Dylan. You probably all of you know Dylan, and I met him yesterday, and we spent the whole evening discussing different aspects of translations, of teaching, etc. Yeah. So Nupchan Sangye Yeshe, who wrote this book, he was saying that the teaching of Kamalashila was incomplete and the teaching of Hashang was complete, yeah? Which is a kind of a heresy from official point of view. And if you read a kind of a transcript of this debate in Samye, then you can see that Kamalashila was debating while Hashang was trying to explain. You see the difference, yeah? Whether you debate or you're trying to communicate. Yeah? You want to communicate some knowledge, but the person is interested to prove his or her point of view and want to debate, to argue. Yeah? So you try to communicate knowledge, but they argue. What you do? You just keep silent because it doesn't make sense. Yeah? And then, of course, you are keeping silent, and then it means that you are losing the debate. But if you don't care whether it's a victory or defeat, then there is no problem. And if you really have this understanding of emptiness, that you have no idea about winning an argument, no. You cannot have this idea, because what are you going to win? What are you going to impose? You just confirm your ego that wants to win. Yeah, it's a competition. Because in China there was no this tradition of philosophical debate. In India there was this tradition. In China there wasn't. So Hashang was doing what Bodhisattva must do, trying to communicate the knowledge. But Kamalashila, even though he had high level of realization, but he wanted to win the argument. He was arguing with Hashang. So we can see it if you read the kind of transcript of this debate. Yeah. And then the doctrine of Kamalashila was accepted as a state doctrine. But there was another reason for that. Because if you have a newly born empire, you need to have some kind of ideology that would make this empire coherent. You cannot run an empire without ideology. But there was already some ideology. What was that ideology? It was ideology of Bonpo, of pre-Buddhist spiritual teaching, which was very strong in Tibet and particularly in Shanshung. And Shanshung was taken by Tibetan Empire, yeah, by Tibetan kings. Shanshung was a different country. Shanshung, where this Mount Kailash is, was a different country. It was not Tibet. It was not what we call Tibet originally. It was Shanshung. They had different language. They had different writing. They had different culture. Even though Tibetans took a lot from Shanshung, yeah, but it was different. And they defeated Shanshung and they absorbed it. They annexed, like we can use modern word. They annexed Shanshung and added it to Tibet. Yeah? And the influence of this ideology was very strong. So you needed something. So you need some ideology, you need some religion. There are many stories in history about this kind of things. Like, for example, when there is a very famous story about Khazar Khaganate. When they were choosing, they invited Jewish priests, they invited Muslim, they invited Christian, and there was a debate, and a Jewish priest won the debate. And then Khazars, who lived on the territory of present-day Russia, mainly South Russia, they became followers of Judaism, even though they were not Jewish originally. And then there was a story in the end of the 10th century when the Kievan prince Vladimir, he also was choosing a religion for his kingdom. He sent his envoys to Constantinople, and he sent also to Western Europe, and he sent to some Latin world, and he sent to Islamic world, and they all brought news. And then when they visited Constantinople, they were so amazed by the beauty and the grandeur of what was there in Constantinople. They said, well, this is like heaven. We never saw anything more beautiful than that. And then this Prince Vladimir, he accepted Eastern Christianity, rejecting Latin Christianity and rejecting Islam. So this is how it was happening. You need something to build a state, some ideology. Like when you defeat Christianity, then, for example, in Russia, in the ex-Russian Empire, they accepted new ideology, which was ideology of communism, communist ideology. And like nowadays in Europe, Christianity is being destroyed, and the people accept all this like so-called green ideology, which becomes also a kind of a religion. So the same thing was necessary in Tibet. But for example, if you have non-gradual enlightenment, you attain enlightenment, and another one attains enlightenment, what's the difference? No difference. Everyone is the same. Everyone is on the same level. There is no hierarchy. Of course, there is a teacher and the student, but this is not a hierarchy. This is a relationship. But otherwise, everything is equal. And if everything is equal, how can you build a state if everything is equal? So you need a hierarchy, and then this system of many levels of bodhisattva fits very nice. If you want to build a hierarchical society, then of course king can be announced as a bodhisattva of the high level, and then subjects are ministers, maybe lower level bodhisattvas, and then subjects are just ordinary beings, etc. And then you establish a hierarchy, what we can see. But with the non-gradual thing, you cannot establish a hierarchy. It doesn't work. So it's not a good ideology for building a state when everything is empty. How can you collect taxes when everything is empty? No? How can you conscribe people to participate in the war when everything is empty? How you make people bow to the king when everything is empty? It's not possible. So it doesn't work. So I personally think that was the main reason why Kamalashila was announced a winner of this race, of this competition. So in general, this idea can be very much disliked, this idea of being beyond cause and effect. And if you have a Buddhist church, because Buddhism is a religion, I mean, what Buddha was teaching was not Buddhism, actually. What Buddha was teaching was Dharma. But then it penetrates the society, it becomes a kind of an integral part of the society, and then it becomes a religion. And then you ask people who call themselves Buddhists, are you interested in liberation? And they don't know what to say because they have no interest. They say, we are Buddhists. But what they're interested in, the same things as everyone. Like if you go to some Asian countries and you ask people, and then you discover that even they respect the religion, they respect the teaching, but they don't share the values of this teaching. They don't share the goals of this teaching. They just feel this is something natural, like we always have. That's why also not so many Tibetans were following Chogyal Namkhai Norbu. And he was saying also that Tibetans are not very much interested in Dharma. They're interested to receive initiation, etc. Of course, there are many Tibetans who are extremely good practitioners, yeah? Amazing practitioners. But these are usually those who really dedicate their lives. But in general, you go to Buddhist areas of Russia, to places like Buryatia, Kalmykia, you go to China, I'm saying about places where I went. And then you meet people there and they call themselves Buddhists. They don't know anything about the Buddhist teaching. Yeah. They don't know anything. You explain them Four Noble Truths and this is a revelation. But they say we are Buddhists. And they say also, oh, we have Buddhism in our blood. And you Westerners, you white people, you really have to work hard, but you never achieve our level of understanding because this is in our blood. Yeah. This is what I heard. Yeah. With my own ears, I heard this kind of things. Yeah. They say, but they don't really know Buddhism. I mean, they don't really know Dharma. Yeah. So when something becomes a religion, becomes a part of the society, then it's losing very much its gist, its essence. It's losing this principle of liberation. Why the hell we have all that? What's that all about? And that's all about becoming free. And then when we have a religion, religion is not making us free, religion is making us slaves, yeah? Because then the symbols and the words become more important than the knowledge, yeah? The same thing happened to Christianity, the same thing happened to Buddhism in most countries, yeah? So when we have this kind of Buddhist establishment that it becomes based on words, yeah? Maybe you know this famous story about Tilopa and Naropa, that Naropa was a very important Pandita in Nalanda University. And then Tilopa manifested as an old, ugly lady in front of him, and Naropa was reading a book. And then this lady asked him, but when you are reading, do you understand words or meaning? And first answer of Naropa was, oh, of course, I understand words. But then he realized what he said, no, of course I understand the meaning. And this old lady, when he said, I understand words, she laughed. And then when he said that he understands the meaning, she cried. And he was surprised, and he asked her, but why were you laughing and why are you crying now? I said, I was laughing because I was happy because you said the truth when you said you understand words. And when you said you understand the meaning, you lied. That's why I cried. That's the story. So it was even about Pandita in Nalanda University, which was a kind of a center of Buddhist studies. So then words become more important than meaning. Symbols become more important than meaning. And then when somebody is saying, oh, we have a teaching beyond cause and effect, it becomes like a heresy. It undermines the whole social structure. Yeah. Because all these people, they have their social position explaining the cause and effect, for example. So that was also the reason why there was a debate. There was supposed to be a debate between Pandita of Nalanda, another Pandita of Nalanda, Manjushri Mitra, and Garabdorje, who was the first teacher of Dzogchen. Yeah, we say primordial teacher. Why do we say primordial teacher? Because it means that this teacher, he did not have a physical human teacher. Yeah, he kind of had this knowledge in him or her. They had this knowledge in them when they came to this earth already. How do we call it in our culture? We call it genius. This is what we have, you know? Because people are not equal. That's a very important thing. People are not equal in their capacities. Rights, it's a relative thing, but in capacities, we are not equal. We have Mozart. We know all the story of Mozart. Mozart started to compose fantastic music when he was like a few years old. He was composing. Some people say, oh, but this is because his father was a musician, and Mozart was exposed to music since his conception. How many musicians we have? We have millions of musicians. How many children the musicians have? Usually musicians, they love making children. Yeah. Yeah. It's a very creative process, yeah, in general, artists. Yeah. So they have many children, and these children are exposed to music since their conception, like Mozart was. Do we have many Mozarts? No. How many musicians were trying to train their children to become Mozarts? Yeah. I have a Jewish descent, so I know. They couldn't make it to me, but I know many victims of this struggle to make a Jewish child a Mozart. Mozart wasn't Jewish, yeah, so first of all, he was Austrian. So first you have to become Austrian, then you try to become Mozart, no? Maybe, I don't know. But this is the point, that you cannot learn to become Mozart. You are just born like that, being a Mozart. Also, in many different fields of human knowledge and activity, we have genius. Like there was this famous mathematician Ramanujan, yeah, who really didn't study mathematics, and then he was discovering solutions, fantastic solutions for different problems. And he was saying that he had visions of some goddess that would communicate to him this solution. This is called also genius. So there was this genius called Garabdorje, and he came already with this knowledge of Dzogchen. He didn't have to study it. He came with this knowledge. He just needed to grow a little bit to learn to speak so that he could communicate this knowledge. Yeah? And he was not the first teacher of Dzogchen. Yeah? Because even before him, like many years and centuries before him, there were other geniuses. They would bring this knowledge, because this is not a theory, this is not an idea, yeah, that someone invents. This is a discovery of the reality of how things are. And of course, this reality can be discovered, not constructed, can be discovered in different times in different places when the conditions are ripe. Yeah? You know very well, you know, calculus, yeah, such thing as calculus. Maybe some of you hate calculus. I admired calculus very much, because I graduated as a mathematician, actually, from university. So I admired calculus. But how calculus was created? Calculus was created parallel by Leibniz in Germany. I don't remember exactly in which city of Germany, but at the time there was no Germany, basically. But now we say Germany. Yeah, at the time was Prussia, Baden-Württemberg, and Saxony, etc. But somewhere there, yeah, he spoke German. What we know, maybe it was even close to Luxembourg. I don't really remember. And then there was Sir Isaac Newton, yeah, who also developed calculus in a different form, in a different notation, but it was exactly the same calculus. And they didn't talk to each other. They didn't ask each other. Didn't consult. They just developed it. Because it was something natural, they didn't create calculus, they discovered calculus. Yeah? They discovered it. Like radio waves were discovered by Marconi in Europe, and then also by Popov in Russia. They were discovered parallel. So if it is a reality, then it can be discovered independently when the conditions are ripe. Yeah? So in the same way, this knowledge of Dzogchen was discovered by Guru Garabdorje, and he was the teacher who brought it in our historical epoch. Yeah? And when he was still young, they say when he was like 7 years old, he would already sing or recite Dzogchen Tantras that were just born within him. I mean, the texts were born within him. And it was about going beyond cause and effect. And then people started to follow. Also, it's not something usual when a 7-year-old boy is teaching some dharma and something very coherent. And then he started to have followers, and there was some fame about him. So the rumors reached Nalanda University, which was a center of Buddhist education. And in this Nalanda University, they were not happy about this. And they decided that someone should go and punish this boy. Maybe he was no longer a boy at this moment because news was spreading very, very slowly. There was no internet at that time. And Manjushri Mitra was one of the best panditas in Nalanda University, so he came to meet Garabdorje. And when he came, he wanted to make a debate with Garabdorje because it was an Indian culture. And usually, according to general rules, if you lose a debate, you either become a student of the one who defeated you, or you commit suicide. It was strong, yeah, something like that. Yeah, and he started to debate, but he was not just debating to prove his point of view, because in this culture also they were trying to understand the opponent's point of view, yeah, which is totally alien to our present culture, right? We are not trying to understand what the point is saying. We are just saying that, oh, he is what can we learn from this person? He is a racist, for example, yeah, or he is I don't know, like a sexual abuser. What can we learn from this person in physics? So this is a kind of a modern attitude. So the argument is about the person, not about what the person is saying. So, but at that time they were still trying to understand. Yeah? And since Manjushri Mitra had a very, very high capacities of understanding, he was listening to what Garabdorje was communicating to him. Garabdorje, of course, he was not debating, he was communicating the knowledge. And at a certain moment, he understood the message of Garabdorje. And when he understood, he could no longer debate. He just accepted that, yeah, this is the essence of Buddhist teaching. This does not contradict the Buddhist teaching. This is the essence of the Buddhist teaching. And then he even wanted to cut off his tongue, but Garabdorje said, please don't. Instead of that, please write a book about Dzogchen teaching in the language of Buddhist philosophy, because it's a special language. Also, Dzogchen language, what we find in Dzogchen Tantras, is not a language of Buddhist philosophy. It's a very different language, yeah, with different terms. And sometimes we can find in Buddhist teaching, we can find words in Dzogchen teaching, we can find words that we cannot find in general Buddhism, many words like this. So we need some language. And Manjushri Mitra did that, and this book became famous. It's translated, it's published in English language, translated by Kenneth Lipman, called Primordial Experience. It's a very complicated book, very, very complicated book, very difficult to understand without having a basic background in Buddhist philosophy. But this is not the only way to communicate. There could be many ways to communicate, because among teachers of Dzogchen, like in Indian period of Dzogchen, within the lineage of teachers, there were like about 20, 22 teachers. There were such different people. There were, for example, kings. Some kings who were lineage holders, yeah? And there were panditas who were lineage holders. And there was something like Kukuripa, a guy who lived somewhere with dogs, ascetic, totally like naked and totally wild. He was also a lineage holder. And there were nuns in this lineage. There were many women. There were nuns in this lineage. There were princesses in this lineage, and there were 2 prostitutes in this lineage. Yeah? And there were ordinary lay people in this lineage. So we can imagine that, for example, a pandita or a nun or prostitute, they wouldn't use the same language when they communicate the meaning. They use a totally different language. Yeah? But the meaning is the same. The meaning, the language we use corresponds to the people we are communicating to. Yeah? Also nowadays, for example, the son of my teacher, Yeshe Namkai, who's another teacher of mine, very important teacher, he is using the language of modern science. Yeah? And recently, like a few months ago, he gave an 8 days retreat. And in this retreat, maybe a couple of times he used the word karma. And probably that was the only Buddhist term that he was using. But he was more referring to waves and photons and Big Bang and this kind of things. He was using this language of modern science to communicate the knowledge. He was using digital means and digital recordings in order to communicate the knowledge. And the meaning is exactly the same, but the language is totally different. Yeah? So what we need is really the message, not the words. And of course, in this way, in this approach, there is no place for something rigid and stable and fixed. And when we have our ideas fixed and rigid and something is contradicting our ideas, then we feel pain. Yeah? It's already scientifically proved that when people have some kind of worldview and they are exposed to an opinion which contradicts their worldview, they experience as if somebody would hurt them physically. Yeah? The brain is reacting the same way. Yeah? So that's why in Dzogchen teaching, we do not follow a fixed structure. We follow the meaning. There are ways of communication, and we communicate knowledge. This is an important thing. Not ideas, not emotions, but we try to communicate knowledge. And this knowledge is related, first of all, to our mind. Yeah? We say in Dzogchen teaching that we go from mind to nature of mind. We discover, we can use mind. We are not saying we are eliminating mind. We can have thoughts. Yeah? You don't need to eliminate thoughts. But we try to understand the nature of these thoughts. You cannot understand the nature of thoughts if you don't have thoughts, right? Yeah? So if we are trying, like in many systems of meditation, we are trying to eliminate thoughts, whatever thoughts which are arising, how can we understand the nature of thoughts? There is no this possibility. Yeah? If we are trying to eliminate emotions, how can we realize the nature of these emotions? If we are trying to eliminate sensory perceptions, how can we realize the nature of these sensory perceptions? So in Dzogchen teaching, we are not trying to avoid anything. Of course, we can develop our capacity of integration. We cannot integrate immediately everything, like Guru Padmasambhava could integrate fire, for example. There is a story. Of course, we don't know whether it's true or not. But at least there is a story of Guru Padmasambhava that when he really misbehaved, he was a bad boy, really. His behavior was, he would be cancelled these days. Definitely he would be cancelled. But I think that he wouldn't care about this. The same way, more or less, like, you know, this famous teacher, Chogyam Trungpa, he would be probably, nowadays, he would be probably in jail next to Harvey Weinstein. But the difference is that Chogyam Trungpa never cared. Yeah. Prison? Okay, prison. Yeah. No, there is a story about my teacher. He was traveling with his students in Norway, and all of his students looked like hippie. And he didn't look like hippie, but he was Asian, so he looked strange. He was with his son, Yeshe, at that time, I don't know, maybe 10 years old or 12 years old. And his students, if you look at the photos, really, they totally look like hippie. Like just coming from Woodstock. And not only they looked like hippie, but they had something what hippies sometimes have, and they were stopped by police. And so in their van, the police found something. So they were detained, and also my teacher was detained. Even though my teacher, he was always saying that we shouldn't take drugs, and this is not about morality. It is about energy. Yeah. He was always asking his students not to use drugs, particularly pretending that drugs give spiritual experience. He said, if you want to have experience, try once. Then you have experience. What's then? Yeah, if you try again, you have the same experience. But then also you become dependent on that, and you become passive, and your energy gets destroyed. So, but his students not always listen to him. I myself not always listen to him. Very sorry about this. I cannot change already anything. Yeah. So probably there was some reason why police stopped them and detained them. And but then they didn't find anything among my teacher's things, etc. They had to release after some time. I don't know, after one day or whatever. And he was in a prison cell with his son. And when they were in a prison cell, they started to play some game. And when the officer came and said, "Okay, now you're free to go," they said, "No, we don't go until we finish our game. We finish and then we go." So that was his attitude. So this is a manifestation of capacity to integrate, because for real master, even prison is not a problem. But we do not have this capacity, so it's much better if we avoid things that would bring us to prison. And also Guru Padmasambhava had capacity to even integrate the fire, because at that time they were not just canceling and deplatforming people, but they would put people on a platform and they would burn this platform. It was not platform like Facebook or X, which do not burn, but it was a wooden platform. So they were platformed, and then they were burned with the fire. But Guru Padmasambhava could integrate with the fire, so the fire could make no harm for Guru Padmasambhava. And of course, those who were trying to burn him were a little bit afraid in this situation. We don't know how it was really, but it's a nice story which gives an example what integration means. And when we are discussing whether it's gradual or non-gradual, we should understand what is gradual, what is non-gradual. And the realization, the understanding is non-gradual. We understand immediately. Sometimes we do not understand immediately. Why? Because we do not know the language in which the knowledge is communicated. For example, we cannot understand some theorem of calculus if you don't know the language of calculus. But if you know the language, we can easily understand. No problem, if you know the language. So in order to understand quantum mechanics, we need to study the language, and studying the language is a gradual process. So acquiring a skill is a gradual process, but the understanding itself, the realization, the intuition has a non-gradual nature. It just happens. It just happens. But the point is that even we have this breakthrough, even we have some kind of insight, we can get distracted from that. We can lose it, and then we only have memory. So then we need to develop our capacity to maintain this knowledge, but we already have this knowledge. And in Dzogchen we say that this knowledge has no gradation. It is not better, it is not worse, it's just the knowledge. What can have a measure is our capacity. Because, for example, we can have a capacity to be in this knowledge while just sitting quietly, but not having capacity to be in this knowledge while talking. Or we can develop this capacity to be in this knowledge while talking, but still when we fall asleep and we lose it. So we need to develop also this capacity. And then finally we can integrate life and death. And that might require time. It's in a way we can say this is a gradual process, but it's not a linear process. Because sometimes we can be distracted by talking, but being aware in the dream. So this is also possible. So to maintain the knowledge, this is the process. And this skill usually requires some training, some practice. There are people who do not require this. They understand, and that's forever. Also kind of geniuses, maybe a lower rank than Garabdorje geniuses, but still. They needed an example. Somebody communicates. For Garabdorje, he didn't need someone to communicate. He discovered himself. But then some people can be communicated, and then they discover, and then just remain in this knowledge. They have enough capacities for that. So it's a little bit like in New Testament. You know what Jesus was saying, that whether you come like long before the beginning of the feast or you come right before the beginning of the feast, it doesn't matter. Everyone is invited, but you have to come to this feast. So it's similar. We can have worse capacities, better capacities, but when we discover this knowledge is this knowledge. Then, of course, we can have different capacities of integrating and being in this knowledge, but ultimately it all becomes the same state. So this is the principle of the Dzogchen teaching. And for getting this knowledge, it is indispensable for us to have a teacher, unless we are genius. I don't think that someone here is such a genius like Garabdorje, because why would you come for this teaching? There would be absolutely no need to come. So I suppose that everyone needs a teacher in this case, needs someone. Teacher is not someone who is explaining, but teacher should be someone who is capable of communicating this knowledge using different tools, using using voice like speech, explanation, using different symbols, because there are things we cannot really explain by words, but we need to use some symbols to show, like a symbol of the mirror, for example. And also there should be a capacity to communicate on a different non-verbal level, and not even on the level of symbols. We call it direct transmission or mind-to-mind transmission. But we need this teacher to be able to understand and then to practice. This is not an initiation in the Vajrayana style, even though it can be combined, these two things, they can be combined. But this is still a process of interaction between a student and the teacher, and then a student has a possibility to understand something. There is no guarantee, but there is a possibility. And this is important. And sometimes people say, no, but we are ordinary people, we cannot do this. But we never know. Even in the time of the Buddha, there were cases like people attained realization just listening to the Buddha. They didn't have to sit for hours under the tree doing meditation like Vipassana, etc. There were many cases they would realize immediately the fruit of there are 4 fruits in that system, in Hinayana system, and they would realize the fruit of never returning to samsara, for example, etc. Even those, there was a story about Angulimala. Angulimala was a serial killer, a maniac who killed 999 people, and from everyone he would cut a little finger and make a rosary of these little fingers. And then he wanted to kill Buddha, because that could be like 1,000th, like a jewel, the finger, Buddha's little finger. And he tried, but he couldn't, and he followed Buddha, but Buddha was walking slowly, and Angulimala, he was a very strong man, he was running, and he couldn't reach Buddha, and then he said, hey, Buddha, you stop. And then Buddha turned to him and said, no, Angulimala, you stop. And then at some point, Angulimala came to senses, and he realized, really, he realized some wisdom, he became an arahant. even though he killed 999 people, including his own mother, but he attained some realization. And this is not even a Mahayana or Vajrayana story. This is a story from early Buddhism. And then Buddha was saying that if you, for example, if you read Mahasatipatthana Sutta, that Buddha was saying that if you practice it for 7 weeks, you can attain realization. If you practice this vipassana, like 4 applications of mindfulness. And he was saying that even 1 week can be enough. We don't have it so much because it's not so easy to practice in this way, to really dedicate ourselves to practice. But he was never saying it would take infinite time to achieve realization. So in Dzogchen, of course, there is no guarantee that we immediately understand. But if you don't try, we never know if we can or we cannot. So it depends on our connection and our connection with the teacher. And it's important that we have trust to the teacher, somehow irrational, not because teacher is speaking nicely. But there is something that we feel that, this teacher, maybe I want to learn something from this teacher. So this is important. And my teacher, Chogyal Namkha Norbu, he was one of the first Tibetan lamas to teach Dzogchen to Westerners. And he's been criticized a lot by other Tibetan lamas. Criticized a lot. He was saying, all these people didn't do preliminary practices, so they cannot they cannot practice Dzogchen. They will go to hell, etc. Yeah, but there are many ways to do preliminary practices. Because people usually know one way to do preliminary practices, but there are many ways to do preliminary practices, not just this set of 4 or 5 or 6 sets of 100,000 practices that you all know probably. But there are other preliminary practices which I explain in Dzogchen Tantras like Datal Gyur, etc. For example, I never did this 100,000 nandra, but I did 3 or 4 different kinds of preliminary practice. So this is another example that things are not always one way. There can be many ways for things to manifest. And my teacher was teaching Dzogchen to thousands of students, and even though he said once, 90% of my students do not understand what I'm teaching. They say, oh, but why is that terrible? And once I was talking to Yeshe Namkai, to his son, about this, but Yeshe Namkai said, but 10% is a huge number. 10% is a huge number if you consider like 10 or 20,000 students, that people who attended his retreats during 40 years. And 10% of that is few thousand people. That's a huge number. So it is possible, maybe not for everyone, but it is possible. But again, as I said already, if you do not try, we will never know if you have a capacity or not. There is no this capacity measure instrument from outside. And one of the most important things, besides this transmission of this direct transmission of Dzogchen knowledge that we can have through communication with the teacher, the collaboration with the teacher, it's not a one-way process. It's a mutual process. We need to collaborate. We are interacting with the teacher. We are not waiting passively. The teacher gives us something. I find this idea in Tibetan Buddhism very, very detrimental, that people receive teachings. And this is what I'm meeting many times. Instead of learning, people receive teachings. Instead of learning skills, instead of developing understanding, people just receive teachings. Okay, they came, they received 1 teaching, 2nd teaching, 3rd teaching. They receive hundreds of teachings. And they never learn anything. And this is not knowledge. This is not a path of knowledge. Buddhism is knowledge. Dharma is knowledge. Dharma is not just collecting different initiations and different teachers, different teachings. Yeah? Dharma is really acquiring wisdom and acquiring skills. So we can see when we are practicing what kind of skills, what kind of wisdoms we learn through this process. And if it happens that maybe we only know some words, or maybe we just receive some teachings, maybe it's not so nice. So, first of all, how my teacher was explaining, first of all, for practicing, really practicing Dzogchen, we need to meet a teacher who would give us direct introduction, introduces us to this knowledge. And this knowledge becomes something concrete. Also, a teacher should give methods for making this knowledge concrete, for not being lost, some advice, some instructions for different methods. Also, how to develop our capacities. If certain capacities are missing, we can develop our capacities. It's not a kind of a final sentence. Yeah, they say, okay, you have no capacities, finished. Recently, a good friend of mine, a woman that I remember in retreats since 90s, and she was one of the most dedicated and devoted practitioners. She really dedicated her life to practice. She was working in order to have possibility to practice, yeah, for many years. And then she wanted to talk to me, and we met, and she told me, after 26 years of practice, I finally understood what was that all about. 26 years, we can think it's a lot of time. But when we look back, it's like this, right? When we look forward, it's a lot of time. When we look back, it's like this, it's not different. Whether it was yesterday or it was 30 years ago, there is no, for our memory, there is no difference. Yeah. And of course, it was important that she had this dedication, she had this devotion, this diligence and persistence in doing practices, and she finally realized she could understand it. Even though the teacher already passed away, there was no Chogyal Namkha Norway life on this planet. But the knowledge still continues. So it can be like this. If you do not have capacities, it's not a final sentence. We can develop capacities if we are really interested, if we are active. That's important for practitioners to be active. And this is the main thing. And then another thing, what Chogyal Namkha Norway was teaching was what he called presence, ordinary presence. Just being present in what we are doing, in what we are experiencing, not being distracted. Even we are distracted, we can be distracted, but we recognize our distraction and we regain our presence. This is called presence and awareness, because awareness means that we can recognize when we are distracted and reestablish our presence. And not only we recognize when we are distracted, but we also recognize when we are starting to get distracted, when this process of becoming distracted just starts, because it's not an immediate process. It unfolds in time. So we can notice this. And this presence and awareness is an important teaching. This is not particularly Dzogchen teaching, but it's important for Dzogchen teaching. This knowledge of not being distracted. Even somebody is not interested in Dzogchen teaching, but not being distracted is important for everyone, no? Because if we consider our problems, then we discover that so many problems we created because we were distracted. For example, when we do to repeat the same work several times, why? Because this we forgot, this we did wrong. Why? Because we were thinking about something, we got distracted. Also, we are distracted, and we are all driving cars, yeah? And it's very dangerous if you are distracted while driving cars. So this presence and awareness is a very, very important capacity, not only for Dzogchen practitioners, but particularly for Dzogchen practitioners. And of course, for Vajrayana practitioners, for Buddhist practitioners. This is important to be able to maintain presence and awareness. Yeah. Even Buddha was teaching presence and awareness. We say smriti samprajanya. In Tibetan, it is Drenpa and Shejin. Yeah, so this is an important capacity. And for Dzogchen practitioners, is the main way to maintain knowledge. Yeah? But for ordinary people, is the way to make the life better. Yeah? To avoid many troubles. Maybe it doesn't bring you money, no? But at least maybe it helps you not to waste money, for example. Yeah. Not to lose time, not to lose precious opportunities just because of distraction. So this is an important thing, and this is going to be the topic of the workshop I am going to give here tomorrow. It's about presence and awareness. It's not about Dzogchen teaching. It's not a proper way, like just to come and say I'm going to teach you Dzogchen. No, this is not a proper way. But presence and awareness is a good thing for everyone. Yeah. So tomorrow I'm going to give a workshop on presence and awareness here. It will not be online, so if somebody wants to come, of course, you're welcome to come. And the third thing that Chogyal Namkhai Norbu would always stress, he was saying like 3 things for practice is the main thing. First is doing Guru Yoga, and Guru Yoga is a way to refresh the knowledge of the primordial state that we receive from the teacher. It's not a ritual Guru Yoga. You know Guru Yoga in preliminary practices, when you imagine some figure like Guru Padmasambhava or Vajrasattva, you're sending lights, you ask for something, you develop devotion. No, this is a ritual Guru Yoga, more ritual style. It's very important also. It's a very nice practice. But it's not what we mean by Guru Yoga when we do Dzogchen teaching. Yeah, Dzogchen teaching, Guru Yoga means being in the state of the teacher. So teacher transmits the knowledge of his state, and then we receive the knowledge of his state. But then Guru Yoga means that we really can be in this state. So this is number 1. And then number 2, he said that just being present. Because when we are present, it becomes like opening the gate for the state of contemplation of Dzogchen to arise within us. Yeah? Just being present. Present also in a relaxed way, but not in a passive relaxed way. And the third thing that he was saying was working with circumstances. It means that we do not have universal rules. We try to understand the situation, to do our best in this situation, not to just follow some rule which does not correspond to our lives, which doesn't correspond to our reality. But taking responsibility and also sometimes breaking rules, yeah, which is also important, yeah. Like nowadays, it's very popular saying thinking outside of the box. So Dzogchen is about being outside of the box, not just thinking outside of the box, but being outside of the box. But we can appear ordinary person. It doesn't mean that we appear to be something very special and exotic and extravagant, etc. No, we can look the very, very simple way. Yeah. But still, we're working with circumstances, and the best example is if there is a rain, you use umbrella. If there is no rain, you don't use umbrella. So in this way, there are many practices that we can use when it is needed, and we don't use it when it's not needed. Okay, so this is what I wanted to tell you. Okay, good timing. And of course, we can have questions and answers, but maybe some people want to leave already. And before you leave, we can make a conclusion. And conclusion means we finish what we did in some wholesome, in some beneficial way. And because even we learned something, but we can easily lose it. We can easily forget everything. We say, oh, it was such an interesting talk, but then nothing remains. Yeah? You know, you go outside and then nothing remains. You come home, nothing remains. You answer the telephone from the first words, you forget everything. Yeah, this is a normal thing that happens. So we need to somehow retain, keep what we develop. Yeah, in Buddhism it is called dedication of merits, but it means that what is merit? We did something good. Yeah. And we think about what we did. We learned something maybe, and we spend our time, and we had some benefit from this. And it means that we can experience satisfaction. Even being tired, we can still experience satisfaction. So we check if we experience satisfaction with what we did, with each of you, what you did, what you learned, what you discovered. You feel this satisfaction, because satisfaction is a feeling that seals the karma. So for karma to be complete, we need a feeling of satisfaction. Yeah? So we seal our karma with the feeling of satisfaction. We can learn it from Abhidharma Kosha Vasubandhu. Yeah? So we feel this satisfaction, and on the base of this satisfaction, we make a wish that this knowledge does not disappear in us, but remains, develops, matures, and brings its fruits to both ourselves and to those who are related to us. So with this kind of benediction and dedication, with this mental feeling, we conclude this talk.